Welcome to the Sharpe Way Show. I have a very special Sharpe Way Show today. I know you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, it's not 7 p.m. on the East Coast. Why is Larry Sharpe coming on? Yes, you're right. This is not the norm, but it's a special day. It is. It is not just a Sharpe Way Show. It's not. It is a Sharpe Reaction Show. Yes, it is. Some of you may or may not know or may remember that I recently had on my show the senior fellow at the American Federation for Children, Corey DeAngelis. Corey DeAngelis is someone who is trying his best to promote school choice and things of that sort that I, in general, support completely. That's something I'm very much in agreement with. However, the Majority Report just recently did what I would consider a hit piece on him. I think it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, a show he did on Dr. Phil. I didn't like that. Why? Now, Corey was good. Corey said, you know what? I'm just going to do a little lull and move on. I'm not okay with that. I'm going to step up because this was incorrect. And I want to show how incorrect this was. And you know this is going to be a good show because my reaction shows are always good. So it is good. So do me a favor. If you're watching this on Twitter, retweet this on Twitter. It would be nice if you would do that. It would help me out tremendously that people can see this and talk about this because it is important. Because there are literally some things being said that are blatantly and obviously untrue. And I want to make sure we cover this. So please do that if you would. Let me see if I can get into it right away because it kind of does matter. So here it is, what they were showing.
Not too often do we play a Dr. Phil clip on this program.
But yes, by the way, it is a Dr. Phil clip. I want to be clear on that. If there's any issue, they're playing a clip, Dr. Phil. So I should be clear on that. They're playing a Dr. Phil clip.
But this is an important conversation, and it's happening on Dr. Phil's program.
Important conversation.
Although, his framing of it is, well, you'll see. They're talking about education.
Yep.
And COVID and how those two things relate. And here he is speaking with Corey DeAngelis, who is a school choice activist.
Wow, look at how the disdain that a school choice activist, disdain in her voice.
A fellow at the American Federation for Children.
This is the anti-teacher union hack.
Yeah, that's
literally, he said, a anti-teacher union hack. So by default, if you're for school choice, you are an anti-teacher union hack.
That's what that is. And this guy essentially makes the claim that teachers' unions did not want to go back to in-person learning during COVID because they wanted to steal from the taxpayers.
She can't imagine that being true. Teachers, unions, steal from taxpayers? She can't imagine that being true, but that literally every teachers' union is paid from taxpayer dollars. That doesn't come into her head. Now, some of you already upset. You're talking about Sam Seder. You're saying Sam Seder is a horrible person. Sam Seder is infuriating. I'm going to give Sam Seder the benefit of the doubt here because he's not part of this. This is something the other two people decided to do without him. So maybe Sam would be on board, maybe not. I don't know. But all I can say is he wasn't here. So perhaps he would be angry with his two lieutenants who are trying to kiss his butt and make him happy and be mean. Maybe. I don't know that. All I'm saying is he was not part of this, so it's hard for me to attack him on this one. That's all I'm saying. I'm trying to be fair to the best of my ability. So I hear what you're saying.
Frankly, this is the right-wing position. That was a lot of what was driving their return to school.
Now, to be clear, the right-wing position that was driving the return to school. I want to make sure you hear that. She said the right-wing position.
Mantra was a way to undercut teachers unions and labor. But here's the...
So to be clear, the reason why people wanted their kids back in school was because they were right-wing, what she just said, and because they were trying to undercut teachers' unions. So for all of you who had kids, as I do and did during COVID, wanting your kids to go back to school, for you wanting that, you are either a right-wing nut or an anti-union hack, or you're trying to undercut labor. Meanwhile, you couldn't go to work because your kids couldn't go to school, and the government monopoly on schools made sure you couldn't even have daycare. So you were trashed because of this, but you're either a right-wing nut, or you hate labor, or you hate unions. This is the smugness that she projects because she believes it.
This discussion that's happening on daytime TV, and like a lot of people watch this show. So,
Corey, you say that teachers' unions are substantially to blame for public schools staying closed during the pandemic. Why do you say that?
Absolutely. There are 6 rigorous studies on the topic. I did the first one with a co-author named Christos Makridis. And
I want to be clear what he just said. There are studies on this. He says that. Studies on this. So he says, hey, I've got some receipts. 6 of them, please check out my receipts. He didn't just go, I think, I feel. He says, I did studies. If you think my studies are BS, I'm providing them to you so you can show me how wrong I am. Literally, that's what he says. I've spoken to him. He will show you the receipts if you want to see them. Most people don't want to see them, but it's fine. If you care and you think he's wrong, and if you're going to go on TV and call him a liar, you probably should check out the studies at least and then say, okay,
and each of these studies found that places that had stronger teachers unions, all else equal, were substantially and statistically less likely to reopen their schools in person. And the reason for this is pretty obvious to me. I don't blame the people in the system. I blame the incentives that are baked into the system itself.
Now, note what he also says. He doesn't blame the individuals. Corey doesn't go, teachers are bad. He never says that. And you saw him on my show if you paid attention. He was just on my show yesterday. He never says teachers are bad, ever. Neither do I, right? What he says is the system is garbage and the system is fostered by the teachers union. That's what he says.
Think about it. The private schools are fighting to reopen from the get-go, but you had the public school teachers unions fighting to remain closed. And the main difference there is one of incentives, that one of those sectors receives children's education dollars, regardless of whether they even open their doors for business. But it was actually even worse than that with the COVID school closures, because the teachers union started to understand that they could actually hold children's education hostage, essentially in perpetuity, to secure multiple multi-billion-dollar ransom payments from the federal government. And it actually...
Now, the point here that you may not get is private schools said, let's just open. Why? Because if private schools didn't open, people would say, I'm not paying this month's, tuition. My kid's not in school. I'm not paying this month's tuition. They will begin to lose money. So, of course, they wanted schools open immediately. They didn't ask the federal government for any money. They said, we can make it safe. We'll do it with the money that we have. But the public schools said, no. We can do it, but you got to give us more money. Not just the salaries we already have, not just the overfunding we already have, not just the 20, at that point, I think it was 26 or 27, I forgot how much it was, $1,000 per kid average in New York State back in 2020. Might have been more, might have been 28. I don't remember. It was 20 something for sure. $1,000 per year per kid. Not that, but billions more. Then we'll consider opening up. Until then, no.
It worked out for them. There's about $190 billion in so-called COVID relief that have been allocated to K-12 education since March of 2020. That's about $3,000 to $4,000 per student, on top of what the government-run schools are already spending of about $16,000 per student per year.
Now, $16,000 is average. New York State, those are rookie numbers for us. Chumps do that, right? The real players, the real school gangsters know if you're not in the 20s, you're not even with us, right? And New York State rules them all now with 29,000. New York City even over 30 average.
Most of that money hasn't even been spent yet. According to the Wall Street Journal, 93% of that funding to this day hasn't even been spent. So the public school teachers unions, I don't blame the people in the system, but they did have an incentive to keep.
He again pulls away from blaming the individual teachers. See, this is what he does. He's not blaming the teachers. He's blaming the system. And he's right.
Their doors closed to secure these ransom payments. In Chicago, 2 weeks to slow the spread turned into 2 years to flatten a generation of children. You had a Chicago Teachers Union strike vote in 2022 They were still fear mongering about reopening schools.
2022, Chicago was still keeping schools closed. That's this year. Still scared. What are we scared of now?
The same union had to delete a tweet saying that the push to reopen schools is rooted in racism, sexism, and misogyny.
Yeah, let's stop at that.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to say.
There is, and you're going to say a lot of it. However, you're going to say lies. But yes, I guess there are a lot of falsehoods for you to say. Begin, please.
So go ahead, Matt.
Well, I just wanted to, let's work backwards from that point. That they always mock this idea that it was rooted in racism, sexism, or classism, and the truth is clear if you look at the polling and who supported forced back to school in-person schooling. It was richer.
Forced back to school. Forced back to school. Like we didn't want to go. Forced. It was
Wealthier
rich white
parents
people?
and more white parents, and the folks who wanted to make sure that there was better distance availability and more safety were lower income and less white folks. Like that's just
so. Okay, come on.
True.
Yeah,
and like the thing is like,
and that overlaps with the private school claim as well, which also overlaps.
Okay, now that's like he says. He just goes, "That's just true," right? I mean, that's what he said. So he wouldn't lie, would he? Or you could instead look at a bunch of polling that you can find, which is grossly easy to find. You just do a Google search, you find that only 1/3 of parents wanted their kids to stick with remote. Only 1/3. And if you look, 65% Black parents did not want it. 57% Hispanic parents did not want it. Most parents didn't want it. This is NPR. He's just literally lying. Like that's a lie. It's just not true, right? Just look at the polling and you can see, actually, no. If you look at the polling, you're wrong. That's absolutely not true. Are you telling me? Maybe you don't know. This is also another fact. You can look it up if you want. There was a baby boom during the COVID lockdown years, and it wasn't the working class. It was the professional management class, which is usually white people. So they were fine with kids staying home. They wanted to stay home with their kids so they could work from home with their kids. They didn't want to go back to school. You don't want to go back to school? Working class people who have jobs, mostly women of color. So what he's saying is literally a lie. He has no data, no stats. He just says it. Well, yeah, because I want to say it's racist, therefore it's racist. It's not. The racist answer was keeping kids out of school. That was racist. Why in the world, if you're a relatively wealthy person, and you could keep your kid at home, you have multiple computers in your house. If you're wealthy, you have multiple computers. You have good internet if you're wealthy. Of course you do, right? Middle class people have that. So if you're wealthy, you easily have multiple computers, multiple devices, all types of things. You're more than happy to keep your kid home. In fact, if you're very wealthy, you probably have a cleaning person, or you have a help at home. You have an in-home helper in some way, shape, or form because you're very wealthy. And many people have servants in that regard. You don't care. You can hire a tutor if you're wealthy. Why would wealthy people want to go back to school? The common sense is the opposite, and the data shows that, and the polling shows that. He is literally just making that up. He has no data to prove it to be true, or he would have shown it. I showed you mine because I have the receipts. Corey DeAngelis has his. He's told you 6 different reports. Look at it. We have the receipts. He has, I think it's racist. That's what he has. Which I guess works if you want to believe it's racist, then you'll just believe it. But it's clearly and obviously not true. He just made that up. I just want to make sure that's clear, that just because some guy says, wait a minute, this is racist, it doesn't really make it racist. There's another poll. I could do another one. It's that one plus there's an NPR poll, another poll that's from K through 12 Dive. They show it also. Most of the parents actually did not want their kids to stay home. Right? Most want their kids to go to school. It's just common sense. Let me grab some more. I'm sorry, I went a little bit too far in this one. I want to head back to where I was here, if I can find it again. I apologize. The reason why I wanted to go down that road, which I thought was kind of very important. Let me go back to what he was saying here. If I can do this real fast. I'll go back to what he was saying so we can show you just kind of how he just made stuff up. Here we go.
Let's work backwards from that point. That they always mock this idea that it was
I did
rooted in
mock it.
racism, sexism, or classism, and the
True.
truth is clear if you look at the polling and who supported forced back to school in-person
showed you.
schooling. It was richer,
Not true.
wealthier parents and more white parents, and the folks who wanted
that be
to make
true?
sure
Makes no
that
sense.
there was better distance availability and more safety were lower income and less wealth.
Okay, why would they want more distance and safety? Why would they be concerned about that when most of those people were literally frontline workers who were already handling it already? They were already in it. It was already happening. They were already in it.
White folks, like that's just true.
Yeah.
That's just
And
a
like
lie.
the thing is like,
And that overlaps with the private school claim as well, which also overlaps with the fact that many of the teachers in private schools are not a part of a union, so they didn't have the ability to make that case to the private institution.
and they had
Okay, it's a private institution. You could say you're not going to work. What do you mean? Oh, so see, if you're not part of a union, you have no power. None. But that's absolutely not true. Private teachers can just go, no, I'm not going to work. Can't they? They can sue their employers. Can't they? They have a similar ability, maybe not as powerful as unions. That's true, but they don't have the ability because if you're not unionized, you have no power. Again, just made up, completely fabricated.
way better support for things like distance learning and stuff entirely. So like to entirely gloss over that is ridiculous. And the other thing we have to understand here is like, and I don't know if he even gets to in this clip about like comparisons globally, but like first, it's not clear to me entirely that the like loss in attainment
She's just like trying to. I got to come up with something. What globally? What happened? Lost in
is because of staying schools staying a little bit closed more than the other ones. I think it's probably the things that have always led to inequality in attainment, which is like we aren't funding these schools properly, and there's a massive.
See all the loss of attainment, which he has to admit is true because it's clearly true. He's saying it's not because of COVID. See, what it is because we don't put enough money in education. So $29,000 per kid per year. That's not enough. That's the problem. That's the problem. But hold on. You know, I looked at something, talked about all unions and such. And there was a guy on the show who talked about Wisconsin and how many people on the left are mad at Wisconsin on how their teachers union has been busted up badly. Well, here's some data for you. Wisconsin, when it comes to schools rated by state, is number 8, top 10. They go up and down around 8, depending on who you talk to and who you're talking about, what specifics, but around 8. Their colleges in Wisconsin aren't that great compared to New York. New York has better colleges, but K through 12 and prepping within K through 12 to get out there and do the work, Wisconsin is always in the top 10, usually around 8. New York, bottom 25, often below 30, often below 40. That's New York. Funding is not an issue. Unions are not the issue. Wisconsin's unions are nowhere near as strong as New York's unions, not even close. Yet they rank 8th, and we rank 30-something, 37 using that area. If you go to like early education, we're horrible. Early education in New York State's like 42nd. Graduation rate, we're like 40th. I mean, we're terrible in that. The graduation rate in Wisconsin is like 4th. They're top 5 in graduation rate. We're like bottom 20 in graduation rate, maybe even bottom 10. So this concept, he's just made up. Again, zero evidence to what he's saying. He goes, I don't like how it feels, but it's simply not true. But it actually gets worse than that. He says, I don't know if this is true, globally and the problems and that kind of stuff. All right, you know what? I brought receipts. I actually brought receipts. It's because I'm not just going to say stuff. I'm going to show you stuff. And more than one, because I actually believe in what I'm saying. This is Harvard Gazette. Mental health impact on children, right? The pandemic's mental health, all about the problems. All of them. Problem. Nothing but the impact. And most of these studies come from the UK. That's not America. That's across the world. There's US studies too. But that's just one. You might go, Larry, that's the Harvard Review. I don't trust them for whatever reason. All right, fine. You don't trust them. No worries. Do you instead say perhaps trust the Guardian? Because the Guardian says the same thing. Sorry, would paid for by Pfizer. The Guardian says the same thing. Right, hold on, I can't get rid of this. Hold on. There we go. Did I do that right? I'm screwing up. I apologize, guys. The ad popped in. Let me get out of the ad. There we go. So if I can get past that. There we go. Young kids, right? Younger children most affected by COVID lockdowns. New research finds most affected. Educational progress and social development of 4 and 5-year-olds suffered severely. That doesn't say money, you didn't fund it. That says COVID lockdowns. That's the Guardian. Well, Larry, I don't trust the Guardian either. Okay, you don't trust the Guardian. Okay, no worries. How about this instead? Do you trust UNICEF? Do you trust UNICEF? Is that who you trust? I mean, I don't know if you do, but I'm giving you more and more spots. UNICEF, immediate effects of life in lockdown on children. Right there. Mental health and well-being in a time of COVID. How it was affected all these kids. They have a list here. Key findings, a list. Females, depressive. Older children, higher most rates of depressive symptoms. More affected rural areas, outbreaks, anxiety, substance abuse. This is UNICEF. I don't know about globally. Well, I do. UNICEF knows. Yes, what he said is utterly and clearly a lie. Disprovable, demonstrably. Whatever source you like, it doesn't matter. Lockdowns were a disaster. School lockdowns were a disaster. It hurt kids. Leaving kids stuck in there, it was a disaster. It did nothing but hurt all over the place. This was, I know what, one more. I'll do one more receipt and I'll stop because there's just so many of them. This one's BBC. Devastating toll on children. Are they all lying? All of them are lying, and he's right. Some dude is right, and they're all lying. Stop. I don't mean to be so aggressive here, but people say this with such smugness, with such, I know everything, I'm the smartest guy in the room. They're not. They're just a bunch of people talking trash, trying to hammer people, right? Anyway, hold on. So let me go back to his funding piece. Now he's about funding again because he thinks funding's the issue, which is clearly not the issue. Again, demonstrably false, just a lie.
Because of schools staying a little bit closed more than the other ones. I think it's probably the things that have always led to inequality in attainment, which is like we aren't funding these schools properly, and there's massive inequality in how we're supporting our kids through these sorts of things. So like to blame it on
that's what it is. It's all the inequality of all the, that's what it is. It's nothing to do with the data upon data upon data showing you wrong. It's not that. I just want to call it racist.
On the teachers unions for being the only place to really stand up in a country that was like Sweden, for instance. People say like
they were the only place to stand up, and then he stops. Why? Because what he's saying was a blatant lie, wasn't true. He was just angry.
These Scandinavian countries, they went back to school sooner. They also have healthcare, like universal healthcare and universal.
It's weird how Florida doesn't have universal healthcare, but somehow Florida just as well as we did. In fact, they did demonstrably better. Florida did, and they don't have universal healthcare. It's kind of weird how that is matter. It's kind of weird how in all those studies they talked about it, no one brought up universal healthcare. Huh? No one brought up universal healthcare. In fact, in the UNICEF studies, they didn't say, well, countries with universal healthcare did better. They don't say that. Nobody says that. You're just guessing because you like to make universal healthcare the answer for everything. Now, it may be an answer for certain things, but not this. Nobody says that but you. If you could find some data, I'd be happy to show that data. But I don't think that's the case. Whether you have universal healthcare or not, if you shove your kids out of school and in a house for 2 years with no socializing, they're going to be hurt. The difference might be is maybe afterwards they'll get better healthcare afterwards. Maybe that's true. I don't know if that's true. If you want to look at universal healthcare when it comes to mental health care, I would look at the VA. The VA is basically universal healthcare for veterans. And how's their medical healthcare going? 22 dead veterans by suicide every single day. It's only about 100 people committing suicide every day in the United States. 22% of those are veterans. Veterans are less than 10% of our population. I would say the VA not doing a good job in that one. Not hitting out of the park at all. Not doing it. Nope, not doing a good job of that one at all. No. But you think that's the answer? I'm going to go with no on that one. You have no evidence to prove me wrong. You're just making stuff up. Like
a public health authority that isn't so bifurcated and price discriminated and even you're not even in it at all to where you're not.
So yeah, that's the problem. Well, the VA isn't that. The VA isn't that. And no one's mentioned that. He just says, I'm mad, let me blame Medicare for all.
And
Any message
strong
after
unions that have like an infrastructure that allows them to go toe to toe with any other interests. And if they agreed to go back to school, that was because of bargaining with that union.
And why was it like those sorts of groups? Like, why were richer people more gung ho about getting back into school? It's because they
weren't. That's a lie. You made that up. See, so you can't say, why was this thing that I made up? Why is that so effective? Well, because you made it up. And you can say it was anything. You can literally say, why did the aliens come down and steal my money? That's a good question. When you made the aliens up, make up the reason why the aliens came. Because you were so good looking, they were jealous. I mean, you could say that. You made up the first part. Make up the second part.
Insulated by things like health insurance and things like that.
And then working backwards from what he said there too.
Kids in New York State. Now I'm going to New York State. So those of you live in New York, you know. And the worst part is they live in New York State. These two people live in New York City. This is a Brooklyn-based podcast. They live in New York City. They should know this. Every single kid in New York City, in New York State, is covered. I'm not making that up. New York State has already done that. Every kid is covered. So even what they're saying is still a lie. When it comes to New York State, all kids can be covered. What's it called? Healthy Child Plus? I forgot. There's a Healthy Kids Plus. All kids can be covered in New York State. If you're under 21 or 18, I wish I knew the details of this one better. It's one of those two, 21 or 18. If you're under 21 or 18, I think 18, you're covered. All you do is apply. And I think there might be a small fee, like, I'm not joking, it's a fee like $7 a month or something like that. I forgot what it is. It's cheap. You can get covered. So when it comes to children in New York State, we have universal health care. So what's the problem? Do you not care about the kids?
One is that they had an incentive to keep schools closed because they were receiving hundreds of millions of dollars in money that was provided for in COVID relief. That did not go to teachers. There's no evidence that went to the teacher.
That's the point. Hold on. All right. Then why do you care about the unions? Shouldn't the unions been giving teachers raises? Yes, you're right. I didn't go to teachers. Who decided that? Who decided that? Was that me? Did I decide get the teachers? Was that Corey who literally said, I support the teachers? No. Who decides the fact that teachers get crappy salaries compared to administrators? Don't get me wrong. In New York State, teachers do well. Not awesome. Relative to other states, teachers do very well in New York State. Again, relative to other states. You're not going to be rich if you're a teacher in New York State, but you get a living wage. The average teacher in New York State, I think now, as of this year, I think makes like $68,000 a year. Some make less or more, but around that. That is a living wage in New York State. You can survive with that kind of money. That's a living wage. No worries, right? You're not going to be rich, but you're not starving if you're a teacher in New York State, right? So great. However, administrators make $150,000 or more. Or more. Miss Weingarten, that's her name, right? I believe it is, who runs a union, makes $500,000 a year. Yeah. Nobody said the money was going to teachers. I never said that. Corey never said that. In fact, if it was going to teachers, I'd be happier. Teachers are providing the most value in this. So why aren't they getting the most money? They're not. What we have is a bureaucratic bloat because you got to keep funding it, according to Matt and his idea. Just give it more money. Well, we do give it more money. This idea that we're not funding it is just made up. New York State increases the education budget. Again, now in New York City, we're over $30,000 per kid spent. But the teachers, she's right, aren't getting it. And the students aren't getting it. That's right. Who's getting it? Unions and administrators. And there are now administrators in certain parts of New York State districts where there are more administrators than there are teachers. And we have an incentive now if you're an administrator, if you're a teacher. Why would I be a teacher when I can be an administrator, make double my salary, no exaggeration, double your salary, and now be the bully? Well, you might say, well, Larry, it doesn't make any sense. It's a teachers union. Why in the world would they be doing that? Because more administrators means more dues paying members. The incentive is for the union to make more bodies to join the union. There's a word now you'll hear all the time. You know what? I'm an educator. What does an educator mean? Why did you acquire that word educator? Because that means you're not a teacher. That's what that means. If it was, I'm an educator. And this actually happened. I was watching a special. I think it was if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a Patton Oswalt comedy special on like Netflix or something. I think that, and he's doing some crowd work. And he asked somebody who they are. And she goes, I'm an educator. And I openly started laughing. I said, it's not a teacher. And he goes, really? What do you teach? Or something like that. She's like, oh, no. This is what she says. I help people get money for college or something like that. You're a mortgage broker. That's not an educator. You're a finance person, and not against that. I mean, finance people are required. Mortgage brokers are required. We need them in society. Good job. Obviously, please do that. But my mortgage broker doesn't call herself an educator. She says, I'm a mortgage broker. Educator means I work in the field of education, but I don't actually teach anybody anything. And so all these educators are now part of the teachers union. If you were to throw all the administrators out of the teachers union and have a teachers union and an educators and or administrators union, that might be more realistic. It's not. So I would ask that question, Miss, I love unions so much. Why aren't teachers getting that much money? It's out there. It's there. Our teachers, with the amount of money we give, should easily be making all of them over 6 figures a year. Easily. Of the 190 or 100 and some odd billion dollars that came down, you're right, it didn't go to teachers. And whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? The union's fault. They decided where the money went. The administrator's fault. They decided where the money went. If that was true, what you just said, it's because of the unions. And you can't even see it. Well, the teachers didn't get it. Who decides? I don't decide that. The governor doesn't decide that. The mayor doesn't decide that. The local administrators who are part of unions, they decide that. So they grifted the money, and you're like, well, we can't blame the unions, even though it's their fault.
That's just a way to, it's right-wing speak about government handouts as well. And then
it's just right-wing speak. Note, they didn't say it was wrong. They just titled it right-wing. Remember it was right-wing propaganda if you want your kid to go to school? They just titled it right-wing speak, and now it has no value. So if I just say it's right-wing speak, clearly it has no value. But what I just told you is true. The teachers aren't getting the money. She's right. Who decides that? Union administrators.
Saying that they held children's education hostage. I mean, this is what they do. To undercut teachers' unions. They cry.
Okay. To be clear, they absolutely did hold education hostage. How do I know that? Because I'm a parent in New York City and I had 2 kids in public school at a time. Yes, they literally did. That's an accurate statement. 100%. I experienced it myself. You did not. I did. It absolutely happened. Corey is correct. If it's not true, why did they wait for $122 billion to come in before they did it? That's called hostage.
The children, protecting the children, as if teachers don't have like an intimate love and an understanding for what children need.
Okay, number one, why would you think that parents don't love their children? That's insanely stupid if you think that. Second, who's talking about teachers? This is a straw man. You bring up, teachers. No, it's administrators. I've said it more than once. Corey was very forward, saying it's not teachers. He doesn't blame the individuals. He blames the union system. No one's trying to fight teachers here. If I would trust anybody with my kid, a teacher or an administrator, of course I would trust a teacher over an administrator. We're talking about administrators here. So this is something, again, she's just making stuff up. No, by the way, no data. She makes it up.
Are in the business to be around children, to educate children, and they do it at a low wage. They wanted to help.
Okay, they stop that. This is a lie. I don't mean to be mean with anyone who makes how much money you make. I'm just telling you a fact. If you make $67,000 a year, you're not a millionaire. I'm not saying you're buying a mansion. I'm not saying that. But that's not a low wage. She is blatantly lying or ignorant or making this up. $67,000 a year is not a low wage. Again, you're not buying 4 cars. I got you. It's not a low wage. A low wage would be $20,000 a year. You're struggling, particularly in New York City. Oh my God, you can't survive. You can't live at all at $20,000 in New York City. But most parts of New York, $25K, you're hurting. You're just barely getting by in most places. If you make $67,000 a year, again, you're not buying your third home, but it's a living wage. She's made this up. And even if she was right, who decides how much they get? The union. They're part of a union that should pay them. You're supposed to be negotiating with your union to have higher teacher salaries. You have a union. So if they have low salaries, they don't. It would still be the union's fault, not mine or hers. We are already giving them $29,000. By the way, that is the highest in the entire country. No country provides more. No state provides more per student than New York State, the state that both she and I live in. She's either lying or ignorant.
Children as well, but they wanted to be safe. And so these ghouls use the children as a shield when what they are really trying to do is break the backs of laborers. And
okay, if you know New York State, and some of you do, we are nowhere near breaking the back of the teachers union. Not even close. We are nowhere near breaking the back of teachers unions. Not even close. I mean, maybe a little dent. Maybe. And I'm probably pushing on that. Nowhere near. So again, making this up. This does not exist. There's no attack on the unions. It's not work. It's not at all. She's just making that up.
Force them into positions where they have less power. And this clip is as
They run teachers unions give the most money to all of the politicians. They have the most power. They make up more and more. They make up more and more holidays to have time off. This is all fabrication. None of it's true.
Illustrative of it as anything that we've talked about, Matt. In particular. So it's just what I mean. What a freaking cretin that guy.
This is everybody who thinks we minimize COVID too much too, and like the idea that what's a complaint that they got this money allocated for them and it wasn't spent. Like to me, that sounds like a system that needs federal overhaul and not like.
So you know what we need? Federal overhaul, because what could go wrong? Think about that. What could go wrong? The federal government, the federal Department of Education got some teeth basically around 1980 or so. Some of you are old enough to remember being in school prior to 1980. Somehow I was able to learn how to read, write, do all this stuff, survive, function in society without a federal Department of Education. Somehow I did that. I don't know how. Clearly I'm the only one on the planet who could do that, because without a federal guideline, how could you possibly educate kids? So your answer is more administrators. Literally, this guy says the answer is more administrators. If the money's not being spent right, who decides that? Hold on, that would be, school administrators, who are part of, the union. You're literally saying, my union sucks, give me more of a union. If only there was a union. There's a union. There's a union.
Greedy people, because they would have spent it on themselves, or Rolls Royces, or
they would have spent it on themselves, Rolls Royces. Let me ask you, administrators having salaries, and again, this is public knowledge, of 300, 400, 500,000. You might go, Larry's all these city guys. Now, I'm gonna show you something, because you guys think they'd be selfish, right? Without the union, they'd be selfish. As you said, okay, hold on. Let me grab this real fast if I could. This part, if I can find it. Hold on. If I can find it. I might not be able to find it if I can, but there was a piece I found. Here we go. Yes. This is a time when the unions made sure, literally, 700 New York City teachers were paid to do nothing. 700 paid to do nothing. They came and sat in schools and gyms and seriously played solitaire, surfed the internet, stared at walls. 700 of them were paid for nothing. The union protected them. Is that the union? These are all people who somehow misconduct or failure or insubordination. So all documented bad teachers. Not I'm mad at a teacher, documented bad teachers. So the good teachers go, why am I doing this? I'm either going to quit or I'm going to become an administrator. Why would I put up with this? So these are crappy teachers. And what do? Show up for 8 hours, play on the internet, play solitaire with their friends, get paid their full salary and benefits. But, without federal oversight, it would be bad. Again, this happens, right? Not just that. There's a list of the top 50 paid administrators in upstate New York, outside of New York City. All of them make over $200,000 a year. All of them. Over $200,000 a year living in rural New York State. Do you know how much money that is in rural New York State? That's a lot of money. I know people who make that in 10 years living up in upstate New York, in rural New York State. They make that in 10 years. They make that in 1. Because what? We're selfish? The right is selfish. The other people are selfish. The people on school choice are selfish. You're giving yourself $200,000 salary for a failed system that comes in the bottom 10 of the 51, you count DC, of 51 school districts looked at, of the states and DC. Bottom 10. You get $200,000 a year, won't go to school because you're scared of COVID for literally no reason. But federal oversight because somebody is selfish. I don't know who's selfish. The guys who are yelling at them are selfish. That's who's selfish. I don't get that at all. This is just stuff. Again, they're just making up. Again, completely and utterly lies, fabrication. No evidence. I'm giving you data and receipts. They're going, I just want to be mad.
Frivolous things in the break room or whatever, right? Like it's clear that we do need. I mean, that's a problem. Is we needed a federal school program
because
through the Department of Education. That's
okay. We have a federal school program. That's the problem. That's the problem. The federal government has become more and more powerful and controls more and more of this and has to give more money. We already have this and it's failing. So what you're saying, we have and it's failing.
It's like, okay, we're going to make sure that every teacher that's in these unions is assured that there is, ventilation, that we're.
Isn't that what the union is supposed to do? So now he's saying, why are you anti-union? So let's get the federal government to fix the union. Well, that's why you have a union, right? So if you're teachers, and I'm serious here, if you're a teacher and you care about ventilation or whatever you care about, I don't have a problem with that. You care about ventilation. Okay. You go to the union and say, get me a ventilation. And they go, nah, I'm just going to give myself a raise again. Good luck with those kids. And now you say, why is Larry anti-teachers union? Or why is Corey anti-teachers union? That would be the reason. And you're like, don't be anti, you're trying to break the union. We'll have the federal government come in and they'll find a way to force them to get teachers money. Well, then why do I need a union then? Then scrap the union and make mandatory salaries for teachers, because what could go wrong with mandatory price fixing? That never goes wrong. So we'll just do that instead. We're
not like cramming too many students into one room, that if people do start getting sick, which is what was happening in Chicago, it was a year ago, like there's something like, okay, everyone's getting sick. It's very clear that
okay, now he made it up. Some people were getting sick in Chicago, one city out of the entire country. Some people were getting sick. He goes, now everyone's getting sick. Again, utter lie. 100% lie. I said this before and I'll say it again. Schools were never super spreaders, ever. That was a fantasy. Kids are rarely affected by COVID compared to the elderly. Rarely affected, rarely have serious effects, rarely bothered, not even rarely transmissible. It's not a thing for them. They were never. And you might go, Larry, you're making that. No, I think you know already that that's not true, right? You know already that's not true. Hold on. Let me see if I can show you something here if I can. This is Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg article. If I can pop this up real fast, can I? Let me see if I can grab this one. Just so you know, is the Bloomberg article, can I get that one up? There we go. Bloomberg article. This is just one. I always give you receipts. I'm not making this stuff up. New York City schools aren't COVID spreaders. City study finds. This is the city itself. Not super spreaders. This whole, what he's saying again, made up. Absolutely fabricated, made up. Never happened, totally made up. He just said that because I'm upset and want things to be bad. All right. You might say, well, Larry, you're upset. The Reason did it. The Atlantic did it. I mean, I'm looking just how it's just article after article after article, no matter what your side might be. This is the Atlantic. Schools aren't super spreaders. Fears from the summer appear to have been overblown. Yes, we knew this. This was a fact. The stuff he said is made up. He's just, this is literally them 10 minutes of trying to beat somebody up. Corey, who's trying to make more freedom for your kids. Trying to make more freedom for your kids and for my kids. Trying to give teachers more respect and more freedom for teachers. We talked about how teachers can start making more money if we did it, what we were talking about with more school choice. Teachers can make more money, not be stuck by the unions who screw the teachers over and give the administrators everything. He admitted that. He literally said, we got to get the federal government in because the unions won't pay the teachers. His saying it, the teachers union won't pay the teachers. Isn't that what he said? Am I wrong? That's what he literally said. Now, if you're liking what I'm saying, I hope you are. Do me a favor, hit that like button. Hit the like. I'm getting all uppity and stuff. So you know what? If I'm getting uppity, you got to hook me up. You got to give me that like button. Hit the like button now. Let people know that you like it, that this is fun and exciting, and you like what I'm saying. I'll get to your comments in 1 second, but I'm asking for one more thing if I could. I'm going to ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please do that. I know I have a couple YouTube channels. I'm asking you specifically, though, if you would subscribe to the Sharpe Way YouTube channel. If you do that, it would help tremendously. Just subscribe to the Sharpe Way YouTube channel. Everyone matters. I'm trying to get around my band of shadow. You know what I'm talking about. Great. If you want to follow me on Twitter, that's awesome. But subscribe to the YouTube channel and click that like button if you would. It really does matter. It's going to help me out tremendously. So let me go ahead and keep going here. He goes on, or they go on, because it's almost, the punishment is almost over, I promise. Let me just keep going here.
Schools becoming a vector for transmission. Like
Never
so we can either break unions and force teachers to get sick, or we can move to remote learning, which, by the way,
so break the unions and force teachers to get sick. All of that is literally a lie. We're nowhere near breaking the unions. Teachers weren't getting sick. I showed you data. There's more. Just do your own homework. Look anywhere. Never was a thing. They made it up. How many stories, just anecdotally, did you see? If you Google it, you'll find it everywhere. Teachers who were getting paid, who went away on vacation. Teachers who were supposed to be remote learning, who were hanging out in their houses, hanging around, playing with their dogs. Right? I had one of the teachers from my own school get in trouble because she was flirting around with her significant other when she was supposed to be teaching kids. And they caught her because she left the camera on. I mean, yeah, I'm anecdotal, but you all know tons who did it. Why? The system allowed them to. The union encouraged them to. The administrators who are making $200,000-$300,000 a year and were down in the Bahamas hanging out on the beach. You're making $300,000 a year and you're on the beach on my dime. No, I'm not okay with that. He is.
Parents wanted, and that is the real problem.
You can see how they struggle to say anything. They don't have anything, but they really want this to be bad.
Here is like all these people, they basically.
You don't see me going, you don't see me doing it because I know what I'm talking about. They're going, because they have no idea.
Just see this as an opportunity to attack teachers' unions for what they say is like an overreaction against COVID, when we all know that that's not the reality here. And to the extent,
again, he says reality. He makes it up. I've showed you data. They're not super spreaders. Teachers weren't getting sick all over the place. That was not a thing. Just was not a thing.
And that like it was unwise. Like, for instance, if I was a dictator during COVID, I would have said, we're not opening bars. We're not opening a lot of this stuff until.
You know, I like the mask off here. I like Matt's mask off. If I was dictator, he is all in. And they'll talk about you. What's funny is this show, they'll talk about freedom all the time. They'll talk about it. But then Matt was like, mask off. If I was dictator, I'd lock it all down. He literally just said that. I'll lock it all down. He wants to be dictator. I know he does. These people love authoritarianism. They love federal rule. If they could, and I'm not joking, you know this, these two people right here would love to have a benevolent king. They wish Sam Cedar was the dictator of the world because they know him, they like him, they're close to him, and he'd be nice to them, and they could just cross all the other people and line all the people who are up against the wall. No, Bahami's a brick wall. And they would just shoot them on the brick wall and they'd be happy because that's what he would do. He just said so. You know what? I like the honesty.
We can make sure that we can do schools.
Yeah.
When we decided not to prioritize things like that, we decided just to like say, let's just go for it. And because
I don't know, he just made that up. None of that makes any sense. We didn't prioritize schools. We just decided to go for it. What does that mean? It means nothing. He just said words that said nothing.
otherwise it was authoritarian. We had all these same people saying like, oh, if you say people can't go to the gym, it's basically authoritarian. And like, I think all this stuff should have been data driven.
If you're saying people can't go to the gym, that's authoritarian. That's not, he said that's not authoritarian. Literally, again, studies say this and show this. Exercise, being active, was a defense against COVID and bad outcomes of COVID. Literally, data-driven, my friend. Matt, if you check any data, not just be mad and be an ideologue, you would know the data was there. If you were more active and more physically active and exercising, you actually decreased your risk of getting COVID and decreased your risk of having a bad outcome if you got COVID. That's data. But you want to be authoritarian, locking everything down until he thinks the people in China who are bolting people into their apartments, totally fine.
And the extent that you have teachers getting sick, then you should have an opportunity to like slow things down.
Yeah. Should we keep going, or was that basically the gist of it? Yeah.
We want a little bit more so we can beat him up some more for no reason.
Reopening schools. The same union had to delete a tweet saying that the push to reopen schools is rooted in racism, sexism, and misogyny. Yeah.
They had to delete that tweet. If what they said was true, why didn't they keep it up? You've seen people put up worse tweets than that and hold on to them. They had to back it up because they knew it wasn't true.
Had the same teachers union ridiculed because a board member was vacationing in Puerto Rico in person while railing against going back to work in person.
Yes. And that happened. That's his. I had two of those happen in New York State too. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's break all the teachers unions in this country because of
Nobody said that. Nobody said that. He just made that up.
I'm dumb asshole. Whereas like, what was Ted Cruz doing? I don't know.
But this is heavily funded. I mean, this kind of
Okay, she just said this is heavily funded. Do you think in any way, shape, or form, the American Federation for Children has more money than teachers' unions? Shut up. Just stop. Just stop. This is heavily funded. I wish the American Federation of Children had more money than teachers' unions. That would be amazing. I wish that were true. This is heavily funded, but the unions aren't? The teachers' union is not heavily funded. Does anybody not see? I guess people watch this. They just want to believe. So I guess when they watch it, they say, Emma said something insanely stupid that makes no sense. But man, I really want to believe it. So you know what? I'm just going to believe it because that sounds right. Are you telling? If school choice was as heavily funded as you thought, we'd have school choice already. We've been fighting for school choice, I'm not joking, for at least 50 years. And if you're old enough, you remember, at least 50 years. How well funded is it? Not that well funded. You just made that up. You just made it up.
It was a little less explicit in the middle of COVID because there was anxiety about, children and staying home and how does that affect their learning. But
Yes.
now that COVID is over to them, essentially, we're still living.
No, it's over. For you to think it isn't is just because you're an ideologue, but it's absolutely over. And for kids, it was always over for kids, not for the elderly. That's not true. But for kids, it was always over.
Through it, and we're in a surge right now. Get your bivalent shot. But
Please don't get you. Don't just get it because you said so. Get it because your doctor told you should, and you trust your healthcare provider, right? Do it because you trust your healthcare provider, and that healthcare provider tells you to do so. That's why you should do it. Otherwise, don't do it. It's because you decide with your healthcare provider is the right answer for you. Please.
everyone's in school. There is a treatment of it as if it is endemic to a degree, and there are no school closures. They are being a bit more explicit in what their intentions were, which was that this was an opportunity to break the backs of teachers' unions.
It's shock doctrine.
Yeah.
No, it was to give people choice. Again,
they saw an opening and right. And the system was weakened to such a degree because of decades and decades of people like Bill Gates saying, like, we need to make schools smaller and privatize and outsource public funds to this kind of
all right, I'm done. She's just ranting. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up because I wanted to defend the American Federation for Children. I wanted to defend Corey DeAngelis, who would not defend himself. He was too good, but I will. This stuff is embarrassing because people listen to it. People believe it. They listen to her. And note, zero evidence in anything they said. None. In fact, evidence to the contrary, which I showed you. I am not afraid to chat with them about this. You have seen me talk to people who are directly against me. You've seen me be respectful of them directly against me. You've seen me do it. I don't have a problem with this. This is the problem. They're utterly wrong, have no data, but the problem is their ideology tells them they have to be right. That's the issue. Let me grab a couple comments if I could. You guys are bouncing a bunch, so thank you. The Libertarian Larry says, yes, Larry Sharpe, live again. My Friday got better. Thank you. I'll be live again, by the way, at 7 p.m. I'll be back on again today at 7. This was a special one because I saw this. So, yes. Mike says, it's just people who don't deserve jobs trying to justify keeping their salaries. The results are... Yes, I think there is a part of that, right? Mike, you have to validate your job. So you keep making things to do. I think that there is something. But that's not just teachers' unions. That's many bureaucracies to include teachers' unions. I think you're right. Yes. Sam says, natural divorce looks better every day. The leftists will not compromise and only want 100% government control of everything. Sam, there's a lot of them who do think that. But here is why I am hopeful. And I know some of you disagree with me. And maybe, Sam, you disagree also. But I think you know where my head is already. What they actually want is a better system, right? A better system. And they believe that this one is so bad, and they're right. So nationalism or communism or socialism looks good. I take this moment in time, and I often compare it to Russia in 1917. Russians had 300 years, Russian people had 300 years under the Romanovs. They were basically serfs in terrible spots, almost slaves. Not slaves, but almost slaves, right? Terrible situation. A couple, revolutions here or there, but nothing big. Revolts, not revolution, results here or there. Generally speaking, just terrible spot. Here comes Lenin. And Lenin says, I got this answer for you guys. It's called communism. Everything's going to be awesome. You won't be serfs anymore. We'll beat up the rich people, and they'll all lose all their power, and everyone will be equal, and we'll all be happy. Well, if you're sitting there as a serf for 300 years, and here comes some guy saying, this communism thing is awesome. You say to yourself, it can't be worse than what I got. So let's be communists. Found out it's just as bad. But they didn't know that. And I wouldn't be mad at them for choosing that. What option would they have? They want something else. Saying we have to be better at showing that our way is the right way, and we're not good enough. And the best example I can give you in modern day, and I say it all the time, and I'll keep saying it because it matters. Thomas Sowell, one of the best libertarian thinkers we have, used to be a Marxist. Why was he a Marxist? Because with the experience and knowledge that he had, that seemed to be the best answer for him. Obviously, he's brilliant. It's not like he's dumb. He was smart. But with the experience and knowledge that he had, he knew the system was broken. That seemed like the right answer. These people are that. And then he eventually saw it. He saw it with knowledge, right? Which came from Milton Friedman. And then experience, working with the Department of Labor, working with the government. Those two things, he went, libertarian. We have to be better at this, Sam, and show them the right way. They don't actually want that. What they want is change. The system sucks. They're right. It does suck. We agree on that one. But this seems to be the right answer. So they're going down that road. We've got to change how they think. That's really it. So yes. Dave says, when a liberal says right wing, it translates to mean fascist. That's kind of true. Yes, absolutely. All righty here. Let's see here. Mike says you should connect with Luke Rudowski, Strongest Alignment of Principles. I'm happy to reach out to people like that. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Jocelyn says, I'd be curious to know how many new homeschool families came after COVID. A whole lot, Jocelyn. Tonight at 7, by the way, I will be having 7 p.m. Eastern. I will be having someone on tonight who wrote Homeschool Hacks, all about homeschooling. If you're considering homeschooling, talk about homeschooling, tonight, 7 p.m. is time to watch. And yes, New York State, huge homeschooling now. Homeschooling was almost non-existent in New York State before COVID. Now, Tons and tons. I mean, so much. Yes. Gene says, I don't know why more people don't listen to you. Me either. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Gene also says 22 veterans commit suicide every day. Yep. It's also estimated that another 30 veterans are lost daily to drug addiction and alcoholism. Oh, I didn't know that stat. Oh, that makes it, yeah, 52 veterans lost daily. Even worse. The VA is ill-equipped to serve our veterans when it comes to healthcare. Yes, that's my point, right? So why would I want VA for all? Now, the VA does some things well, like if you break your leg or something and you have to get your leg in the cast. The VA tends to be very good at something like that. It's a simple thing, break, fix. They tend to be good at that. But things like long-term care, cancer, recovering from heart, mental illness, they fail constantly. Yes. Yes. Craig says, tell me why the problem with COVID, what was the problem with COVID and why it's capitalism report. Correct. It's always capitalism. It's always the problem. It's always 100%. Christopher says, I reckon unions today serve a different purpose than unions of 100 years ago. I think you're right, Christopher. And I'm not anti-union. People know that I'm not anti-union. I'm anti-public union that's controlled by government where there is no pushback. Yeah. They've got to do something. They got to fix that. They have to fix that. Absolutely. So yes. Phil says, some teachers in my school district were making six figures, especially towards the end of their career with coaching pay. When benefits are included, they especially would boost the last 3 years of income to boost their pension. Crimea River. It's a good point, right? To be forward, I'm not upset with a teacher who's been teaching for 20 or 30 years, making $100K, and they're also coaching. That's not a bad deal. I'm not okay. I'm not upset at that. What I'm saying is they're not starving, right? They're not starving. And this is what they're trying to act like teachers are getting low pay. That's not true. They're not starving. Obviously, when you're a starting teacher is going to make $100,000, right? But if you've worked for 20, 30 years and you make $100K, I'm not mad at you. You worked 30 years teaching kids. It's fine. No worries. I don't have a problem with that, right? So, but my point is, you're not starving. You're doing fine. You're doing fine. All good. Yes. All right. Sam says, just a reminder, the school year is 180 days, and there are 365 days in the year. Teachers are 10-month employees. Valid point. Gene says, $67,000 a year is roughly triple what I make. Of course, I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where the cost of living is lower than New York. Yes, that's my point, Gene. I know I keep saying it, but I'll be clear. I'm okay with teachers. They're making a decent salary, right? Some states, that's not true. I'm talking New York State. They live in New York State. We're talking about New York State. Teachers are fine here. They're fine. And if they're unhappy with their money, then the union should be giving them more, right? So even if teachers weren't making much money, if that were true, it's not. It's not. Gene, you and I aren't stopping them. The union is, or isn't, either one. So yes. All right. Let's see here. I'll grab a couple of these. Dave says, the problem is the Democratic Party wants us to believe there will be uneducated rubes without the Department of Education. You're correct. And there's no example of that. Because Brian goes in and says, I graduated in 1979 before Carter created the Department of Education. Most people consider me reasonably intelligent, at least. Yes, I graduated early 80s, so I'm a little bit younger than you. But most of my schooling was prior to 1980. Most of it was, right? So somehow I learned to do all the things without a Department of Education, somehow. So yes. Gene says, I graduated high school in 1978. How did I learn anything with the Federal Department of Education? Thank you. I've been saying this forever and act like, no, we need federal. Why? It makes no sense. It's number worse. Brian goes on to say, since the creation of the Department of Education, government schools have basically become government indoctrination centers. Yeah, absolutely. Kathy goes on, there isn't one single metric that has improved since the development of the Department of Education. Yes. Sam says, why do schools put bad, in quotes, teachers are put on administrative leave, do nothing instead of enrolling them in retraining classes or have them co-teach with high-performing teachers? Yeah. Why don't they? Great point. Yes, absolutely. So, absolutely. Let me keep going down if I could. A lot of these, I appreciate all these things. Grace says, most teachers I know got out because politics, and leave it at that. You know, what they won't tell you, because they talk to educators, and not teachers. The biggest reason why teachers leave, yes, is they're tired of not being able to teach. They're tired of having to do what administrators tell them. And in New York State specifically, New York State teachers are no slouches. They have to get at least a master's degree and that they get other credentials before they even can be a teacher. So we make them go into debt. We make them do all types of jump through hoops. Then they become a teacher and we go, great, do nothing until I tell you. Well, why'd you make them get credentialed? Why'd you make them jump through hoops? So now I've done all the things and I'm ready to go. I'm like, good, let me teach. I got kids. I love my kids. I want to do the right thing. Here I am. Shit. Paperwork here, teach this, teach that. Don't do it. What? Well, then why'd I get educated? I'm saying let teachers teach. Absolutely. Let teachers teach. Oh, Corey's on. Corey, thank you so much, my friend. I'm glad you were able to watch. I hope you understand. I'm so glad you were able to see it. I hope it made a lot of sense. Thank you. Yes. He goes on to say the majority report removed the part where I pointed out that the Chicago Teachers Union board member was vacationing in Puerto Rico while railing against going back to work. Yes. Yes. I mean, that part, I had that happen in my state too. Absolutely. Yes. John says, hey, Larry, I'm guessing those people are not Joe Rogan fans. And I'm a union member who is very libertarian. My union does way more good than it does bad, in my opinion. Happy holidays. Again, this isn't about the unions. If you're a teacher, right, and you don't have enough money, you're part of a union. The union is supposed to get you more money. It's not my fault if you don't have enough money, right? That's my point. And never have been against unions. I'm with you. And this is the point. If you're happy with your union, you should stay with it. Why wouldn't you? But why is there so much teacher burnout? There shouldn't be so much teacher burnout, and it's all over the place. Sam talks about it all the time, many people talk about it all the time. Why? You have a union. Because the teachers union doesn't support teachers. It supports administrators. So I think two separate unions. An administrators union, teachers union. And now we're good. Have two separate unions. Life is good. That fixes it all. Absolutely. So John says, the big issue is the administrators grabbing all the money and none of it going to the kids. You have hit it perfectly, John. That's exactly it. Guys, if you like what I'm saying, if you enjoyed this show, then do me a favor. Click that like button. It does matter. If you're watching on Twitter, please retweet this on Twitter. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube page. And otherwise, do what I always ask you to do. Go to theadvocates.org. They are my sponsor. Support the show by supporting the sponsor. It does. If you don't do it again, just do it to make me happy, please. Go to the world's smallest political quiz. Go to theadvocates.org. Theadvocates.org. Take the quiz, or there's like 7 or 8 special surveys. Take one of the surveys, whatever one you like. There's tons of them. Take one of them. And whatever one you take, post your results. Do that. They're happy. I'm happy. We have more conversations. We keep moving this stuff forward. Guys, I want to thank you so much for today. I will be back on tonight at 7 p.m. talking about homeschooling. Homeschool. I will see you guys all.